The wind screamed over the plains like a widow keening for the dead. Rain hammered the tin roof of the old ranch house in hard, unrelenting sheets, turning the dry earth to soup and tearing leaves from cottonwoods like scraps of war. Thunder cracked the black sky in crooked veins of light. Somewhere a horse screamed. Inside, the fire in the stone hearth fought back against the cold draft, flaring each time the wind found a crack in the old walls. Eli Townsend sat in the shadows, boots off, his socks damp from a leak in the roof he never bothered to patch. The ticking clock marked each second with a bullet's weight. He didn't sleep on storm nights. He hadn't in years. The nightmares came louder than the thunder. A tin cup of whiskey trembled in his calloused hand when the knock came. A single heavy knock. Then a second. No one knocked at his door. Not in years. He rose slow, every joint creaking like an old gate. A double-barrel shotgun stood beside the door, always loaded. He lifted it as habit, not threat. Lightning lit up the porch. The door groaned as he pulled it open. And there they stood, 10 figures cloaked in wet wool and silence. Faces painted with rain mud streaked down cheeks. They didn't flinch. One stepped forward, a tall woman, sharp jaw, eyes like broken coal. Behind her, a boy no older than 16 staggered, leaning on a spear like a crutch. Blood soaked his leg. Eli looked from face to face. Apache, all of them, and not by accident. The woman spoke. "We seek fire. Dry roof." One night. Her English was careful, learned, not begged. Another bolt cracked the sky. The boy behind her swayed, then crumpled into the mud. Eli didn't move. He didn't blink. Not yet. Not until the boy groaned a sound too human, too young. The sound of someone else's mistake echoing back. Eli stepped aside. "Bring him in." The woman nodded. One by one, like shadows reborn, they crossed his threshold, tracking in rain, silence, and the past. Eli Townsend hadn't spoken to a soul in nearly 3 winters. The mailman left parcels at the gate, never came farther. He'd grown a reputation, the ex-Confederate turned cattleman who neither bought nor sold, who took his whiskey with silence and lived with ghosts. His ranch, tucked between 2 arroyos and sheltered by aging cottonwoods, was more a monument than a home. The kind of place birds circled but didn't nest. Inside, the walls bore the fading stains of old tobacco and dried blood. A bullet hole still lived in the back door near the latch. He never patched it. A reminder of that one night long ago, the night the boy died. Eli kept a locket in a drawer beside his bed. Inside it, a faded daguerreotype of a boy, maybe 10 hair matted from play eyes, squinting into sun. No one ever asked about the child, but Eli had the story rehearsed just in case. He never spoke it, not once. The boy's name was Caleb, and he died in Missouri during the war, but not by a Yankee's hand. He was killed when Eli gave the wrong order. "Fire on the village," he said. "Burn the hiding places, smoke out the partisans." Only later did they find the women and children. And Caleb. Caleb had followed them into battle, wanted to prove he was a man. Eli found the locket in the ashes. That was the day the rifle got heavy in his hands. That was the day Eli buried the uniform, sold his horse, and drifted west. Kansas first, then the Colorado plains. A broken trail until he found the quiet spot between arroyos. He built the house by hand. 5 years back, he stopped marking time. When the Apaches came that night, something stirred beneath his ribs. He gave them stew, old potatoes, salt pork, and bitter coffee. They sat quiet around his hearth. The woman whose name he learned was Neshoba never took off her wet shawl. Her brother, a broad man with a crooked nose, stood guard even while chewing. The boy with the wound. Chaska lay on a cot in the corner, teeth chattering, eyes half-lidded. Eli dressed the leg. It was a musket round, old, jagged, poorly extracted. Infection had already set in. He crushed willow bark, boiled it, and dripped it past the boy's cracked lips. The others watched, unmoving, unmurmuring. Just eyes. Neshoba approached the hearth and pointed to the locket on the mantel. "Your son." Eli's lips tightened. "No." A long pause, then "Not really." She nodded like that answer meant more than a yes or no. In the firelight, Eli's scars showed, one above the collarbone, one lower, pink and raw even after years. Scars from men who didn't ask questions. He didn't ask theirs either. But he saw it in their eyes. This wasn't just a stopover. They were running. From what he didn't know, but the way Neshoba's brother checked the window every 15 minutes told him the storm outside wasn't the only thing chasing them. Still, Eli said nothing. He brought blankets lit. The lamps poured another drink. When the fire died low, Neshoba finally whispered, "You are not afraid." Eli looked at the shotgun resting by the door. "Lady," he said, "I'm afraid of everything. I just got tired of showing it." That night, as the wind howled and rain turned to sleet, Eli sat in his rocker with the locket in his palm. The past wasn't dead. It had just found another face. Morning came gray and cold, the kind that freezes breath in your throat before you can speak. The storm had passed, but the wind carried a bitter edge, brushing frost over the prairie like a warning. Eli stepped outside, boots crunching on brittle grass. He scanned the horizon. No riders, no smoke trails, just empty plains the way he liked it. Inside, the Apaches stirred slowly. Neshoba spoke softly to the others in a language Eli didn't know but felt in his bones. It was thick with mourning but calm, resigned. Chaska remained feverish, sweat soaking his brow. Eli pressed a hand to the boy's chest. His skin burned under Eli's palm and his breathing came in quick gasps. The infection was spreading. Eli fetched another kettle, dropped in more bark, and sat beside the boy. "Drink this," he said, lifting the boy's head. Chaska blinked but didn't resist. His hands were small fingers calloused from archery or labor. One hand clutched a bundle tied with deer sinew feathers, beads, and something that looked like a baby tooth. A charm, maybe. A protection. Eli didn't ask. "He your son Neshoba?" asked from behind. Eli didn't look up. "No, yours, my sister's. She died giving life to him. His father was a white man." Eli did look then. Her eyes were hard. "Not you," she said before he could speak. "A soldier." Eli grunted. "Figures." Neshoba crouched beside the boy, whispering in Apache. The boy murmured back something soft. Neshoba translated without being asked. "He dreams of the fire." Eli hesitated. "What fire?" "A village, a raid, years ago. Soldiers came, burned everything. He doesn't remember much, just heat, screams." Eli's fingers twitched. He glanced at the locket on the mantel again. "That war's over." "For you," she said. "He still smells smoke when he sleeps." Eli stood and grabbed his coat. He needed air. Outside, the sun was breaking through the clouds, light slanting across the grassland like blades. He walked to the barn, let the door creak open. The cattle stirred but didn't rise. One mule looked up and huffed. The world felt like it was holding its breath. As he turned to head back, a shadow moved near the edge of the arroyo. A figure stood there, maybe a half-mile out, staring at the ranch house. Eli froze. Then the figure turned and disappeared into the gulch. By the time he reached the house again, Neshoba had placed hot stones wrapped in wet cloth around Chaska's leg. The boy had stopped shivering, but he was still pale. "He needs rest," Eli said. "And quiet." Neshoba nodded. The others began preparing to leave, but Neshoba lingered. "We were heading to the Black Mesa," she said. "But he can't ride. He won't survive the trail." "What do you want from me?" Eli asked. She hesitated. "One day, one night more." Eli sighed. "Then you go. If he can stand, we'll go." Eli looked at the boy. He looked so much like Caleb it made his stomach churn. Same jawline, same defiance under all that pain. He closed his eyes, jaw tight. Then he nodded once. "He stays. You stay. Just one more night." That night, Eli stoked the fire higher. He didn't sleep. He just sat, shotgun across his lap, waiting for the past to knock again. The sun was sharp the next morning, piercing through the clouds like judgment. Chaska's fever broke just after dawn, sweat soaking through the bandages Eli had wrapped the night before. The boy slept now, breath steadier, lips no longer cracked. Neshoba hadn't left his side. Eli stepped out onto the porch, mug of stale coffee in one hand, shotgun in the other. He didn't trust the calm. Something in the air was wrong. Around mid-morning, he saw dust rising far off toward the east, curling up from the horizon like smoke signals. He counted 5 riders spaced wide. Military formation. His breath caught in his throat. He walked back inside. "Neshoba," he said quietly. "You and yours need to stay low." She read his face. "How many? 5? Maybe more behind." "From the fort, I'd bet." She nodded, and like water through cracks, the Apaches disappeared into the barn behind hay bales, into the cellar through a trap door Eli hadn't used in years. Only Neshoba remained visible, seated beside Chaska with a blanket pulled up to her chin. The knock came crisp and loud, not like the night before. This was authority. Eli opened the door. A young officer in a clean blue uniform stood with gloves tucked into his belt, flanked by 4 mounted men. "Lieutenant Ezra Dyer, Camp Wallace," the man said. "Apaches came through this area 2 nights back. 10, maybe 12. Armed. Dangerous." Eli didn't blink. "Ain't seen a soul but cattle and crows." Dyer looked past him, scanning the shadows inside. "We have reason to believe they fled this way. Took horses from a rancher north of here." "Then maybe they're riding south," Eli said. "This ain't a trading post." Dyer's jaw tightened. He stepped onto the porch without invitation. "Mind if we look around?" Eli shifted his weight. "I do." The silence thickened. One of the soldiers spit into the dirt. Another rested a hand on the butt of his rifle. "We're within our right," Dyer said coldly. "Under territorial statute, and this here's private land," Eli snapped. "You want to trample it, get a paper, signed and stamped." Dyer's smile was thin. "You were with the 43rd, weren't you?" "Virginia boys." Eli's blood chilled. "Once." "We have your name," Dyer said. "Old logs. Said you knew these parts. Fought against irregulars, good at tracking." "I gave up that trade. But a man doesn't forget the smell of Apache blood, does he?" Eli's fingers tensed around the coffee mug. "No," he said. "He never forgets it." Dyer stared at him another moment, then turned to mount his horse. "We'll be back," he said, "with papers." The 5 of them rode off, slow eyes still scanning. Eli didn't relax until the dust trail vanished. Inside, Neshoba emerged from the shadows. "He'll return." "I know." "Then we ride now. The boy won't make it." Neshoba hesitated, her face torn. "They will burn your home. Wouldn't be the first time." He walked to the hearth, took down the old revolver from its place behind the clock, blew the dust from the barrel. "They'll come through the cottonwoods at dusk, always do." Neshoba nodded. "Then we fight." Eli didn't reply. He just loaded the chamber 1 bullet at a time. In the barn, the Apaches prepared quietly, methodically. Knives were sharpened, bows restrung. Chaska remained too weak to stand, but he watched with wide, aware eyes. When Eli passed him, the boy reached out and gripped his wrist. "You stay," he asked, voice hoarse. Eli looked into those dark eyes so full of Caleb it hurt. He said, "I stay." Dusk fell blood red across the plains, and with it the sound of hooves returned. They came under moonlight, hooves hushed by the sand rifles slung low, the sharp smell of oil and arrogance thick in the air. 12 riders now, not 5. Lieutenant Dyer led them, jaw-clenched, coat buttoned to the throat despite the warmth of the evening. The cottonwoods behind Eli's barn swayed gently, their long shadows dancing like ghosts over the dirt. Eli stood by the fence line, shotgun in one hand, revolver tucked into his belt. Neshoba crouched nearby behind the water trough, bow drawn, arrow notched. The others were scattered, invisible in the dark, but ready. This wasn't their first ambush. Eli Townsend Dyer called, reins tight in one hand. "We're claiming this land for federal search under wartime clause. You'll step aside or be arrested for harboring hostiles." Eli stepped forward. "You come here with 12 men for 10 wounded souls. I call that cowardice." Dyer's smile vanished. He raised his hand. "Take him." The first 2 soldiers dismounted, rifles up. Eli didn't move. As their boots hit the dirt, a sharp thwip split the air, 1 arrow, then another. One man cried out, the other crumpled, clutching his neck. Chaos broke. Gunfire erupted, flashes lighting the cottonwoods like lightning. Horses screamed. The Apaches moved like shadows, slipping between trees, releasing death in silence. Eli took cover behind a stack of barrels and fired the shotgun once, twice. 1 soldier fell backward, hitting the dirt hard. Another charged, bayonet raised only to be cut down by Neshoba's brother with a hatchet's swift, brutal swing. The ranch turned into a war zone. Splinters flew from posts, windows shattered, and Eli's front door hung ajar like a broken jaw. Smoke curled upward. Someone set fire to the barn. Eli bellowed and ran toward it, bullets whipping past. Inside, horses thrashed blind with fear. He threw open stalls, slapped rumps, screamed until his throat tore. He led them out into the night, some wild-eyed, some bleeding. One collapsed near the well. When he turned, Dyer was there, revolver-drawn eyes mad with dust and rage. "You protected them," Dyer said, stepping forward. "You traitor." "I protected a boy," Eli rasped, raising his own gun. "Don't dress that up as sin." Dyer fired. The bullet struck Eli's shoulder, spun him back. He fell to one knee, blood soaking his coat. Dyer moved in to finish it, but before he could, a scream tore the night Chaska. Limping, barely standing, the boy had dragged himself from the house, a bow and shaking hands. He loosed one arrow. It struck Dyer's horse in the flank. The beast reared, screamed, and threw its rider. Dyer hit the ground hard, coughing dirt. Neshoba was there before he could rise. She planted a foot on his chest, knife to his throat. He stilled. "We're not the savages," she hissed. "You are." Behind them, the fire spread to the house. Eli, staggering upright, watched it consume the roof. The locket still hung on the mantel inside. He turned, limping back toward Chaska. The boy collapsed into his arms, shivering. Around them, the remaining soldiers fled. A few lay dead in the dust. The Apaches gathered, bloodied but alive. Dyer coughed, still pinned. "You'll hang," he spat. "You'll all hang for this." Eli stepped forward, bloody and grim. "Go back to Camp Wallace," he said. "Tell them it was lightning took the house. Tell them you found nothing." Dyer sneered. "You think they'll believe a traitor?" Eli leaned close, blood dripping from his sleeve. "No, but they'll believe a coward." Neshoba released him. Dyer staggered to his feet, hate seething in his bones, and fled into the night. The Apaches said nothing. They just watched the fire burn. It was over. For now. The house smoked for hours, collapsing in on itself like a dying animal. Sparks drifted skyward, caught in the cottonwoods until dawn. Eli sat in the dirt beside Chaska, arm-bound in a makeshift sling skin caked in blood and ash. The Apaches had gathered what little they could, blankets, water skins, tools. No one spoke. Neshoba stood near the ashes, silhouetted by the glow. Her face was unreadable. "There's something you should know," she said, finally, not looking at Eli. "It was your fire." He blinked slow. "What the boys dream. The fire that haunts him. It wasn't just any raid, it was yours." Eli stared, breath caught. Neshoba turned, then eyes like iron. "You burned his village, 12 years ago, near the Cimarron. You wore gray." His heart stopped. Memory struck like thunder flames, rising cries from the brush, a child's scream. "I didn't, but he had." He remembered a woman shielding a boy. He remembered sparing her. One woman, nothing more. He remembered the locket pulled from rubble, cold and blackened. Caleb's locket. A gift to the son of a partisan. "She was my sister," Neshoba said. "The one you let live. She carried that boy through the ash. She raised him alone until fever took her." Eli looked down at Chaska. The boy slept, chest rising, slow, peaceful for once. "I didn't know," Eli said. His voice broke. "I swear it. I tried. I tried to stop it." Neshoba knelt, eyes locked to his. "You can't undo what's burned, but he trusts you." Why Eli looked to the ruins? Maybe because I'm the only one left to carry it. She opened her hand. In it, the locket, blackened but intact. "This was found on my sister's body. She wore it always. She said it was a gift from a man who spared her." Eli took it, fingers trembling. "It was never mine to keep." Neshoba rose. "Now it is." The boy stirred, mumbling in sleep. Eli stood, swaying from blood loss. "He'll need more time to heal. Let him stay. I can protect him." But Neshoba shook her head. "Too dangerous now. You shed blood for us. They'll return with more." "Then I'll go with you," Eli said. The Apaches behind her tensed. "You've fought us before," Neshoba said. Would your hand not tremble in our camp? It already does, Eli said. But it still holds steady when it counts. She looked long at him. We ride at sunset. If you're not ready, we go without you. She turned. But know this, he thinks of you as kin. If you leave now, you become another man who vanished in smoke. Eli stood long after she left, staring at the locket in his palm. Inside was the same photograph, Caleb smiling. But next to it, tucked beneath the fold, was a second image. A woman with strong eyes and a boy at her knee, Chaska younger, staring out from a world already scarred. The boy he'd spared. The woman he'd condemned. The child he'd orphaned, now saved by his hand. A circle of ash drawn closed. When the sun began to fall, Eli strapped on his boots, saddled his last horse, and packed nothing but a canteen and the locket. Chaska opened his eyes as Eli approached. "You're leaving?" the boy asked. "No," Eli said. "Not this time. Will they trust you?" "They don't need to," Eli said. "Just you." The boy nodded slowly. "Then we ride." At sunset, they disappeared into the horizon, 11 shadows fading into gold. The high desert swallowed their tracks by morning. 11 riders crossed the ridgeline before dawn, their silhouettes stretched thin against a sky the color of bruises. The group moved with quiet purpose, worn from loss but bound by survival. Eli rode at the rear, his body stiff with pain, left arm tied across his chest, revolver slung at his hip, more for comfort than use. Chaska rode ahead, wrapped in a wool blanket, one eye always drifting back toward Eli. Trust, once so scarce, now rode between them. The Apaches didn't speak to him at first, not in contempt, just caution. Eli didn't push. He knew the silence was earned. On the third night, they made camp in the shadow of a stone bluff. A small fire crackled under the stars. Chaska sat cross-legged, slowly carving a pattern into a flat piece of cedar. Eli sat nearby, mending the strap of his saddle with one hand, working slow, steady. Neshoba approached, crouched across the fire. Her face was softer now, lines of war replaced with quiet endurance. "We ride to the sacred land," she said. "Beyond there we scatter. Find safer ground." Eli nodded. "You need someone to watch your back. We need someone who knows how to vanish," she said. "You can't be that man unless you bury the old one." Eli looked down at his saddle, the thread pulled tight. That man burned. Neshoba studied him. "Names are powerful," she said. "Do you still carry yours?" He paused, then reached into his coat and pulled the locket from its resting place. He opened it in the firelight, showing it to her without a word. She leaned forward, studying the 2 images inside. Caleb and Chaska younger, smiling faintly at the camera, her lips parted slightly. "You kept this all these years. It was all I had left to remind me who I used to be," Eli said. "Now it tells me who I should have been." Neshoba nodded. "Then keep it, but bury the name Townsend with your ranch." "What name should I take?" he asked. She smiled slightly, her eyes catching the fire. "Ask him." She nodded to Chaska. Eli walked over, crouched beside the boy. Chaska looked up, cedar carving in hand. It was the shape of a horse with a flame for a mane. "For you," he said, handing it to Eli. "Your horse burned. This one rides with you always." Eli took it, throat thick. What would you call a man who lost everything, but still chose to ride again? Chaska thought, then said softly, "Toheka." "It means he who burned and rose." Eli held the carving to his chest. "Then that's who I am now." In the morning they left the bluff. By nightfall the group reached the edge of the Black Mesa. From there they split in 2s and 3s, fading into the canyons and hills. Neshoba was the last to leave. She looked back once at Eli and Chaska, then vanished into shadow. Weeks later, a patrol from Camp Wallace found the ranch in ruins. Nothing but ashes, hoofprints, and an old saddle nailed to the last standing post. On it a name carved deep with a knife, Toheka. No one at the fort knew what it meant. No one could say what happened to Eli Townsend, but sometimes riders crossing the high plains at dusk said they saw a tall man beside a fire tending a small herd, a boy always nearby, and a carved wooden horse tied to the saddle tree. The wind would pick up then, and the smell of smoke would drift across the land, not of ruin, but of something reborn. Some wounds don't bleed, they smolder. They wait in silence until the wind shifts and smoke finds the lungs. But redemption isn't in forgetting. It's in the ride that follows. Eli Townsend died in those flames, but Toheka lived on. Not as a legend, not as a savior, but as a man who once set fire to the world and then chose to walk through its ash. And if the boy Chaska grows to carve another horse for another broken soul, perhaps the land will remember not just the blood it took, but the mercy it returned. Watch more Western stories. Subscribe and ride with us again.